I got a treat for you today. I got two brilliant, and I mean brilliant scholars. Not only are they brilliant, they beautiful too. Baby, when you got them two things going on, that is a heck of a combination. So I have with me today Dr. William Darity and Miss A. Kirsten Mullins, and they are the authors of From Here to Equality: Reparations for Black Americans in the 21st Century. And baby, I got my copy. I'm gonna hold that up, this book. But let me give you some information and some background. Dr. William Darity Jr. is the Samuel DuBose Cook Professor of Public Policy, African American Studies, and Economics at Duke University. And Miss A. Kirsten Mullins is a writer, a folklorist, museum consultant, and lecturer. And she focuses in on race, art, history, and politics. And I want to thank you both so much for being on the show today. I am so honored. I think this is the second time we've interviewed one another, but your first time interviewing with me on my new show on Unbossed on TYT. And I'm so grateful that you both have taken the challenge to really go deep on what it means to give reparations to the descendants of enslaved Black Americans in this country. I know there are a lot of people who've been working on this movement before you. You're working on it right now. There's some others, but to have the courage to dig deep in this and to lay out a full blueprint on what can be done and what must be done for Black Americans to finally get the reparations that we need and deserve. I am in awe of your work. And so my first question is, what is the Black reparations movement for people who may not be familiar, and why is it important?
Well, first, let me say that Kirsten and I are thrilled to be on the program with you. And we've been working on this, I guess, for approximately 3 decades. Took us about 10 years to write the book. I know that there's a number of other people who've been working on the reparations project longer than that. Especially Mary Frances Berry, who written an excellent book on Callie House, who was a major figure in the reparations effort in the 19th century. And so if we're thinking about the movement has an extended history. I think that the first significant moment in the effort to gain reparations that had any kind of momentum was the period in the immediate aftermath of the Civil War, when Black Americans who had been newly emancipated were promised 40-acre land grants, which they never received. And we view that as the debt that sets the foundation for reparations. And thereafter, there have been a number of efforts to gain forms of restitution, but those efforts have largely dissipated. And so we're hopeful that in this moment, there's going to be some sustained growth in the movement for reparations.
Yeah, agreed. And Ms. Mullins, one of my favorite chapters in the book is chapter 10, Sins of the Sons and Daughters. And you both make it clear that what is owed to the descendants of enslaved Black Americans goes beyond slavery. You go deep into the broken promises, whether it's the 40 acres and a mule, as well as the land theft that Black people suffered for those Black people who were able to accumulate land despite the betrayal by the federal government, how white mobs, which would be considered in our lingo, white terrorists, took the land that they did gain from them. Can you talk to us about why that particular chapter of the book is so important?
The topic you're talking about is really relevant for today. When you look at the fight to prevent Black people from having a grub stake, from having an asset in the form of land, you're looking at white supremacists who were arguing against Black people becoming full citizens in the United States. There's a whole panoply of things that one needs to have access to in order to fully function, to be, to have well-being in this country. And at the end of the Civil War, that meant land, land on which to live, to develop your livelihood, to have crops, to be able to sell those crops. And then you're looking also at a moment when Black men were given the right to vote. And because so many of the ex-Confederates refused to pledge allegiance, to sign an oath of allegiance to the United States, they were not eligible to vote. And so these Black Republicans mostly were very active in the political sphere. And stopping them, preventing them from exercising that franchise was a big part of the motivation of the violence that was enacted over and over and over again. Over 100 massacres that we've been able to document that occurred between Reconstruction and the end of World War II. So these massacres are very, they're studied, they're very particular in where they occurred. Many of them happened on election day or right days before the election. And in some cases, when the results of the election were not to the white supremacists' liking, they ran out of town or, injured or murdered the Black Republicans and their allies who were lawfully elected so that the outcome would be to their own choosing, to the choosing of the white supremacists. So these are, voting rights, the ability to hold on to acquire land and to hold on to land. These are problems that Black people are still dealing with today.
That's exactly right.
The ability to live one's life, to live in peace, to be free of white vigilante violence. These are all issues that are very much a problem.
These multiple instances of white coups d'etats are a foreshadowing of what took place on January 6, 2021.
Exactly.
That's exactly right. And I want to put up this quote, and I'm going to have you back on because we got to go. We can go longer, but I want to put up a quote. I love how in every chapter you have several quotes, and this one speaks to me so much. And this is coming from Frederick Douglass. The world has never seen any people turn loose to such destitution as were the 4 million slaves of the South. They were free without rules to cover them or bread to eat or land to cultivate, and as a consequence died in such numbers as to awaken the hopes of their enemies that they would soon disappear. That is coming from Frederick Douglass, celebrating the past, anticipating the future, 1875. And as I said, there are several wonderful quotes that just kind of shake you and really set up the foundation to each and every chapter of this book. I encourage anybody who is curious, people who want to know what it will take to continue this gallant fight for reparations, you must pick up the book. But my question here probably will be my final question, and maybe hopefully each of you can say something about this. The clock is ticking, and Marissa's gonna let us know when we are out of that time. But in keeping with other, in the book, you talk about how reparations is not foreign to this country or to this world, but somehow it becomes a thing, a hurdle, a mountain when it comes to paying reparations to the Black Americans who are descendants of enslaved people. What do you say to folks who believe that this is out of source, that this cannot happen when we talk about reparations? And we only have 1 minute left in the show, so I'm gonna have you back.
It's important to talk about precedents. When you're talking about the United States case, we have first the case of Japanese Americans who were unlawfully interned during World War II, who did receive reparations, $20,000 payments to each victim. We have more recently, in the case of the 9/11 attacks, and this was a situation when the United States was not even the culpable party, but the United States did pay reparations to the victims and to their heirs and their estates. Then, even more recently, many people are not even aware that the United States paid reparations to the hostages in the Iran terrorist takings. And those individuals received approximately $10,000 per day of captivity, which amounted to about $4.4 million per victim. So I think the first thing is we need to learn more about our history, to learn more about what has taken place, so that we can have a better understanding of what is possible. And certainly in the case of the pandemic, we have seen that the United States federal government has the capacity to mobilize large sums of money to benefit the American populace when there's a will to do so.
That is exactly right. I know, Dr. Darity, you want to jump in here, but we are out of time. We're going to do a part two. We will do a part two. But this from the book, when you say it must designate Black American descendants of US slavery as the eligible recipients, I mean, you really break it down. It must specify at minimum a key target of the reparations project is elimination of the Black-white wealth gap. That was one of my questions. Basically, do you believe that we could eradicate that gap without reparations and achieve by raising the average level of Black wealth to the average level of white wealth, et cetera, et cetera? It must indicate that the federal government will finance the project. It must prioritize direct monetary payments as the core form of restitution. Oh my God, we have so much more to do. Ms. Mullins and Dr. Darity, we're gonna have you back for a part two to this. And if your schedule allows, I wanna try to get you back on before Christmas so that we can finish this riveting conversation. Again, thank you so much for being in this fight. Thank you for your brilliance and your beauty and your commitment to justice. This is it, y'all. Pick up your copy, From Here to Equality. Sending love to both of you.